I think too,
Got
like
early morning,
we've
too.
had each of you on individually, but having you both on collectively, like you guys had us on and, you know, taught the audience about our story. Like I would like to ask how you guys kind of got everything rolling.
Yeah.
I met Whit.
And like his perspective, because he was still playing, right? Or you were playing?
Yeah. Okay. So from the podcast perspective,
We should pin that till Whit gets back so they can bounce off each other, though.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you my side is, well, he got drafted by the Penguins 5th overall a year or two after I was drafted 4th round. So we ended up in the same organization. He played a lot more in the NHL, but the first year that I'd cracked the lineup, I got to play, I was there for 26 games, so I got to hang out with him and like never really connected with him that much in training camp, but he's just this fucking silly bastard from Boston. And through that short period of time, we connected. He ended up getting traded off. I played with his good friend, Keith Yandel. We kind of kept in touch and then somehow ended up on a PTO together, like a player tryout in St. Louis towards the back half of our career when I never played another NHL game after that prior season.
Yeah.
So we were there on the PTO and we were just going to every meal together and hanging out and going out to the bar and having some beers. And we talked about this concept of creating a show together where you'd show up to the arena with your hockey bag, you'd crack it open in the hockey locker room and you'd have a 6-pack. You'd never eventually put your gear on. You just sit there and tell stories and you'd have different guests on. And we thought the idea of like a YouTube show. So fast forward, I was still playing for another 3 years. He retired and he tweeted out like, hey, how about starting a podcast with a couple guys, one of me being on it. And I messaged him. I said, hey, I'm not going to hang him up yet and I can't start a podcast because I know how I am and I'll let it fly and I'll be fucking getting snipped before I know it. And he started one with Rear Admiral and then Grinelli hopped on board. And by the time I retired and then did a film project and got 1 year of media under my belt and had been a guest on their show, Spittin Chiclets, he was like, hey man, like I talked to Grinnell, I talked to RA and we think that because you've been on and such a popular guest, you should come on full time. And it was the original idea. Like you were one of the original guys. And so I'm like, yeah, like, and by the time I finished that first season and had that under my belt of doing radio, color commentary for the Coyotes, I agreed to it and the rest is history. I'd already had a Twitter base of 1 million people. So I also thought because I was comfortable on the mic and I already had an audience, it kind of just helped it grow that much more significantly right off the hop, where all of a sudden the people who were following me on Twitter are like, oh, this guy's got a mic in his hands now all the time and he's letting it fly about anything. Yeah, I'll go listen to that. So I think at the time they were averaging probably like 30 to 50,000 listeners per
I would have no idea.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden like
exploded.
we gained momentum, and then after getting maybe 150,000 listeners on average, we were able to get our former teammate in Pittsburgh, Crosby, in Halifax, and then we got Nathan McKinnon on that same trip. So we had these big milestone moments along with creating more vertical brands like the Sandbagger, and it's just evolved over the last, I think it's been 6 and or 7 years, at least 7 since I retired. So it's been magical and it's been unreal and it's been a fun ride, and more importantly, like we get to stay around the game and have a purpose when we wake up every day, like we talked about earlier, like bringing these awesome interviews and getting to talk to these awesome guys and bringing the fans a more exclusive inside look, like feeding what they want. So that was my rendition of how it all went down, and I don't know what you'd have to say about it, Whitty, now that you're back from
I told this story on the first time I came on the bus. It's pretty much exactly the same thing. And it's like, timing's everything. Every time I meet somebody that asks about the pod, it's like timing's everything in life. You gotta get lucky. Podcasts, as this thing began, I didn't even know what a podcast was, really. They were so early. Did you try to start it now? It's just not, it's not the same. We were lucky. We were I'm not going to say we were first, but we were early on. Mm-hmm. So timing's everything. He retires. He doesn't get in it right away. And like, who knows? Like then I started with RA, right? Maybe he wouldn't have been in it had he already been retired. So like, boom, then you got RA involved in it. And then the way we met Grinelli, our audio broke. Me and RA, one of the episodes, sat this close to each other, shared a microphone, and the audio ended up breaking, or that might have been a different story. Either way, RA got an email that night.
No, he'd gotten it a few weeks prior and ignored it. And then
from Grinnell,
whatever the receiver system RA had, it was janky. It was RA, and like, he just had it at his house. Like this was mom and pop style, right? And when it broke, the episode was obviously wasted. They've been talking into a mic for 50 minutes and nothing was being recorded. I'm sure Whit was thrilled, but that's when RA was like, "Oh, that kid reached out," and then boom, like Grinnell got the opportunity.
Nice,
and he's
that's awesome.
And Grinnell's evolved and learned so much, and it's just been an incredible experience. And like Whit said, very much a timing thing because podcasts weren't that popular, and I'm not saying we were the first hockey podcast, but we were the first one that I think that a lot of people had heard of just because of the reach that we had, and also chemistry was important. And fuck me, being in St. Louis hanging out with you, I think that we kind of understood that we were very much alike.
Yeah.
And I played with Keith Yandel, who played over 1,000 games. He's the Iron Man, another funny bastard from Boston. We're gonna get him more involved on our podcast this year, and I think
he's one of my closest friends from home.
Yeah,
that then played with Biz, and they became buddies.
That's awesome.
So I also, he had been such good friends with Keith, like, and I had met him first. So then we're getting St. Louis. I'm like, we just like we're true good friends, and so it's like this makes it a lot easier. Yeah. We also have honest conversations with each other too. Like you guys, I'm sure it's like that's being like good friends. Like you got to be honest about everything, and we have been for the show and for like us.
Yeah, and I also like moving forward. We talked about the like building vertical. Like we've done game notes where Colby Armstrong and Merles, two of our buddies who we also used to play with in the Pittsburgh system. Like Army was already doing media and television. Merles kind of got into it from the gambling side, but is awesome and brings a whole different opinion and flair to. So they have their own like sister podcasts. And they're going to keep evolving. Like Jans is going to get more involved with us, where maybe when Kevin Hayes, his best friend, another player, retires, they kind of come on board, and we kind of want to make it. We kind of want to make it where we're all just snapping it around and get to travel around together, and we just have this awesome whack pack where we're kind of back on a team. It's not just me, Whit, RA, and Grinnell, where there might be stories or relationships or experiences that Colby Armstrong, Merles, Jans have that are going to be different than us, and we want the hockey fans and fans of any sport to embrace all of it. So that's kind of where I would like to see it continue to branch out and grow. But for the most part, everything we got going on right now, I couldn't be more thrilled about.
That's fucking
awesome. That was a very long-winded answer about what we going on.
But it was nice. You painted a good
to.
picture to where you're like, damn, it is kind of dope what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
You see, there's obviously a lot of similarities between you two and Will and I.
Would you guys ever bring on other NFLers like to like as a part of the?
I mean, we rock with Delaney Walker.
Delaney
he does
Walker's
the locker
our
room
guy.
with us, our gambling show. And then he'll pop on the bus on spots. But yeah, I mean, we've definitely talked about stuff like that before, like scaling out the business and
that
if you can get athletes.
Yeah, that to me is like, I was in a dark place when I my last year in the NHL after I left that PTO. I didn't have a deal. I couldn't even get an American Hockey League deal, and I was like literally depressed on the couch. To the point where like my muscles were sore, and I'd never been like that before. So to kind of get somebody in the LA organization to extend an olive branch and for me to go on and win a Calder Cup, I just kind of feel like I would want to keep doing that to my buddies and give them that opportunity to where they can do it and have something after hockey too. So it's going to be cool. I think it's going to keep happening for us, and I really look forward to it. And like I said, I'm very grateful for everything we have.